talk a little football right now with the great Danny Kelly from The Ringer. He's a senior staff writer. Ringer Fantasy Football Show, the Ringer NFL Draft Show. It's all Ringer. It's all Danny Kelly. You can follow him on X at Danny B. Kelly. His weekly visit brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated by two diehard Huskies. Their names, Manny and Roger. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 23 years, makers of Manny's Pale Ale, Bodie's Off IPA. Tap room open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Visit them, georgetownbeer.com. How are you, sir?
I'm doing excellent. How are you doing?
Doing great. What's the B? What's that hat?
Bellingham Bells. It's like a minor league team up here.
Sure, yeah. You're up in Bellingham. Have you always been in Bellingham?
No, I was in Seattle for like 15, 16 years. I've been kind of back and forth. I grew up in Bellingham, but I'm back here now.
Yeah, you up there with the granolas. You're a hippie. People don't know that about you.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Danny Kelly, he joins us every Wednesday as we talk football storylines, all the top storylines around the NFL, and of course fantasy football as well. Sneak them in. YouTube chat room. If you want a fantasy football question, I'll try to sneak in a few here for you. If you have any questions there for Danny, he's an expert in fantasy football, okay? Not like me, whose team's terrible, who thought it was a good idea to draft Derrick Henry for some reason, thinking, well, it's Baltimore. They're going to run the ball. And Derrick Henry's terrible. All of the token Chiefs season it's 2 games in, done. Already done. Season over, and once again will not be in the playoffs. For those who don't remember, Danny and I, we used to do a podcast 15 years ago called Field Goals or the 12th Man podcast.
Yeah, the 12th
Man podcast by when Danny was working there for Field Goals. Let's jump into it. I want to start with something that I saw on your Twitter feed.
Okay.
About the scoring. I know it's only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, but we like to overreact on this.
I love overreacting.
Yeah, well, that's the best thing about doing this job is overreacting to everything. The scoring down the NFL, 21.4 points per game. If it holds, as you wrote, it would be the lowest since 2006. And then on top of that, there was another stat you had in there about passing.
Yeah.
Through the first 2 weeks, 300-yard passing games. Through the first 2 weeks, there was 5. Last year at the same time, there was 15.
Yeah.
So why is this? Is there a reason for this? Is it just one of those things? Why is scoring down? Why is passing down?
Well, I think there's like 5 or 6 different variables that kind of like a confluence of events here that are like pulling offense down essentially in the NFL. Number one, I think the obvious thing is like teams don't really play their starters in the preseason anymore. So a lot of these guys are coming in super rusty, not really quite ready. I think as season goes on, the offenses will get a little bit better. But like big picture, we've had a whole bunch of like Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks kind of age out and retire over the last few years. And I think the NFL has struggled to, replace those guys with high level quality quarterbacks. Basically, there's no middle class or very, very small middle class at quarterback right now. I mean, you're seeing guys like, I would say, Jared Goff, Geno, Baker Mayfield, Darnold is maybe going to come and start to be part of that group. Like there's a small cadre of guys that are sort of what you consider the middle class, the guys that are making like middle class, salaries and still pretty good, but not like elite quarterbacks. That group used to be a lot bigger, I think, because the NFL, generally speaking, was a lot more patient in developing their guys. And now it's just like, we got these guys on the rookie contracts. We have to take advantage of this. So we're bringing in these very young players and quarterbacks and asking them to carry our offense, even though they have no experience. And turns out it's really, really difficult to be a quarterback in the NFL. There's just a million things that you have to do. And that's before, there's a million things you have to do before the ball is even snapped. There was a great example of this last week. My buddy Nate Tice tweeted out like a video of just Bo Nix in the huddle trying to get the play call communicated to the team. It took him like 20 seconds. And it's like, that alone is hard. And then think about the 30 other things you have to do before the ball is even snapped in terms of like trying to figure out what the defense is doing. So I think it's like a quarterback issue. The kickers are better than ever right now. There actually was more field goals through 2 weeks this year than ever before. Like the NFL is turning into a field goal sport, which is obviously no one wants that. Why would we want that? There's more accurate kickers from 50 yards away than ever before. So
all I can think of is our mutual friend Michael Sean Dugar, who who hates kickers more than anyone.
Just take them. I honestly would be fine if kickers were like, just figure it out. We'll do without kickers.
Eliminate them. Good, because then we can eliminate this stupid kickoff.
Yeah, I mean, the kickoff thing is the other thing.
It's
I
so
think
dumb.
so. Scoring was way down last year. This is a major issue. Every time that happens, the NFL gets together in the offseason, is like, okay, we need scoring to go back up. So I think that was part of the reason they did this kickoff. But and in theory, if the kickoff worked, if basically the teams were doing what the NFL thought they would be doing, which was like actually kicking off the teams, I think scoring would go up because of the field position. But teams are far and away mostly just kicking it back and taking the the touchback. So it's I think offense will get better, but right now, I mean, this is like some of the worst offense we've ever seen. You mentioned the points per game is 21.4 points per game. Like that's lowest since 2006. The touchdowns per game are like truly one of the lowest I've ever seen. The most recent we've seen in terms of team touchdowns per game is 1992, and after that it's all like 1940s and 1930s. Like this is like the worst offense we've seen by a lot through 2 games. So it's a little bit concerning. I think it will get better, but it is concerning.
What'd you think of the speaking of offense, the offensive performance last week from the Seahawks? I mean, Geno Smith's been pretty good through the first 2 weeks, but we saw something last week, Danny, that we just haven't seen in a while. 30 combined targets for DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, I don't know when the last time they've had 2 wide receivers with 30 targets. And I know it's part of the game plan because they didn't have Ken Walker and they wanted to pass the ball more. But man, it was just they just seemed like in that game they barely scratching the surface of what they can be offensively in that passing game, what they showed last week against Patriots.
Yeah, and I think the big picture sort of outlook on what they did in that game is it was refreshing because in a way, I mean, obviously it's not going to work every week, but it was refreshing, and this is something that like Bill Belichick has done over the years, like being like flexible to play the type of game that is best for your individual opponents. Like I feel like for the Pete Carroll era, and obviously it was a huge success over the long term, but for the Pete Carroll era, it was like we're going to do our thing, we're going to do our identity, and we're going to stick with it no matter what. Like even if it gets really ugly and really hard, we're going to run the ball, we're going to establish it, be balanced, blah blah blah. Like in this game, the run game was not working. Like Charbonnet could not get anything going. I think he had one of the lowest success rates as a runner in the NFL this week. It was like 14%. That's awful. So they abandoned the run, and I actually appreciate that. They're like, you know what? We're just going to be more successful passing the football. Geno Smith like spread them out. Was finding like his targets really consistently. JSN was like hitting the easy button on so many plays. It was awesome to see that. And so it felt refreshing from that point of view where it's like, okay, the run game's not working. Let's go to something that's working.
And it was great, and it worked. I mean, they were able to. It just felt like Grubb was in lockstep with what they wanted to do offensively, just in terms of we've got 2 guys out there right now. There are going to be matchup problems, and then I liked it. They moved DK around.
Yeah,
it wasn't just running the same routes that they always run, and it was just there was a thought process to it, right? There was let's put him on the left side, let's put him on the right side, let's put him in the slot, let's put him in motion.
Mm-hmm.
It's something we didn't see from Shane Waldron and even. Schottenheimer and all the other offensive coordinators they've had in the last few years.
And this is a good secondary for New England. So the fact that they were able to do that against a really good secondary is super encouraging. I thought Geno Smith was like close to perfect in this game.
It's great.
So yeah, really good signal. Obviously that you'd like to have the run game be a little bit better, but that was even before the game coming in. It was like, that's a really good run defense. We're probably gonna have to pass more than we usually do, and they did it, and they were able to move the ball. I said this already, but I loved how they had some like easy button plays to just get the ball moving, like stay on pace or whatever, stay on
script.
Right.
Is that what they always say? Is that the cliche, right? Yeah.
Yeah, stay on schedule is the word I was looking for. It's basically like, you're not getting yourself into 3rd and longs every time, like it felt like the Seahawks have done over the last like 10 years. So yeah, very encouraging. Obviously, and this is another game where you're on the East Coast, early game against a good defense. Typically, this is the type of game the Seahawks will lose, I feel like. But they came through in the end. And
there was 2 plays in there, Danny, and then we'll move on off the 6. There was 2 plays that they did, and I don't think they executed. I don't think they got the first down on either of the plays. But it just showed me in a glimpse into McDonald and Grubb. Is they had 3rd and 15 or something like 3rd and 15 and a 3rd and 18.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually tried to get the first down.
Yeah. Don't you love that?
Yes, I did. They didn't run the ball.
Yeah,
they didn't run a draw. They didn't run like a screen. They tried to actually get it. You know, if that's Pete Carroll and Waldron or Schottenheimer, you know what they're doing. They're going to hand it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're going to play field position. We'll punt it away and we'll let our defense do the work. I'd like they were just, you know what? F that. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to try to pick it up.
Yep. I absolutely love that. That's, and the aggressive mentality, I think, is showing, and the players react to that. The players kind of feed off that, I think. So yeah, I mean, again, all great signals. They were going against the Seahawks been lucky to go against like two pretty bad quarterbacks so far. So the tests, will be later on in the season when they face really good quarterbacks. But I have so many reasons I'm just like really happy with how everything is going.
It's crazy how it's shaken out for them, because they're really not going to see anybody until they get Jared Goff the week after this, right? And then they get the Giants. That's terrible. And then they'll get Brock Purdy with San Francisco. But I guess they get lucky because of the injury to Tua. Yep. So they get Skylar Thompson coming up this week. But it leads us into Tua's health. I mean, I knew that was going to be the storyline. Once he got it, was immediately, should he retire? Should he retire? Should he retire? I do wonder how much of that does go through, the thought process for him. And of course he wants to play, Danny.
Mm-hmm.
He does. Every player wants to play, but it's, sometimes you need somebody else to make the decision for you.
Right. And it's good. I mean, in this particular case, like, it's good that they put him on an IR. So I think they're not like tempted to let him come back sooner than he should and go through the whole process and figure this out. There's no like huge rush. Obviously there's an immense amount of pressure on every quarterback to like come back quickly. But yeah, I think you're right. It's like he needs to take the time to really figure this out, because this is like his health long term. This is really scary stuff.
Yeah. If you're on the YouTube chat, if you want a fantasy football question for Danny, just type it in there on the YouTube stream. Go there now, Puck Sports. If you're not watching, if you want to leave the Twitter view and go over to YouTube, you can throw in a question there, and we'll get it for you. There's a couple in there that we'll get to here in a quick second. Bryce Young. What's going on? You had the Mel Kiper rant yesterday. I thought he made some good points. Listen, if you're going to establish a new offense and a new culture, maybe you should play a little bit more there. But before that, right, Danny, there were doubts about this guy as a quarterback at the professional level. There was always going to be one that wasn't going to work out. He's feeling probably the pressure to watch CJ Stroud be such a hit right now in the league.
Yep.
Where does Bryce Young go from here?
I think he has to at this point look at the long game. You see guys like I mentioned before, Geno, Darnold, Goff is another example who like was really, really bad early on in his career. Baker Mayfield. I think he has got to take the long view and be like, look, I gotta at this point try and be a backup, try and like do as much you can to like, be really, really sharp with all the stuff that you can be in like mentally in terms of the game, like the playbooks, studying defenses, all that stuff. Like basically look at the long view, because I don't think they're going to bring him back this year unless you see Dalton get hurt or something like that. But yeah, at this point, he's at a real crossroads, because his career could be over. But I think he has to look at it like, look, when I get my next chance at some point down the line, if I do get another chance, I have to be able to be ready. But like, honestly, he may never get another chance. Like, you remember Josh Rosen, like,
yeah,
he was really, really bad. Yeah. And he basically, he got traded. I think they traded him for like a second rounder. He never really did anything with his new team, and then he was done. And, so the NFL is not super patient with these guys, even if you're the top pick. And he's just really never shown anything. I don't think he's really flashed at all. Is the problem. And he's had, 17, 18 games or whatever it is that he's played, 16, 17 games. And there's been almost nothing to like hang your hat on in terms of like, oh, he could develop.
Yeah. And we've talked about that. I think we've talked about this before, and it's an obvious point. It's just so important where you go for these quarterbacks, especially when you got to play early on. If you go to the wrong situation, it absolutely can stunt your career. I think that's the worry right now that I think Bears fans are going to have with Caleb Williams. Yep. He's immensely talented. The problem is Shane Waldron's his offensive coordinator.
I know. I still don't really understand. Maybe did I ask you this last podcast? Like, I don't understand why they decided they wanted to go get Shane Waldron of all people.
And the
Seahawks literally were just like, all right, see you later. Like, go for it.
Think anybody knows. And then you've got a coach who was on the ropes last year, will no doubt be on the ropes again this year. And so, let's say they make a move, then he's going to be, second year in the league, maybe on a new head coach, another new offensive coordinator, and it's a revolving door. It's like
it's a vicious cycle. Yeah,
it is. And so it's just so important where you go. and where you land and the right coach and the right situation. And I know maybe talent can supersede all that kind of stuff, but I always just think back to the Patrick Mahomes example, just because he just went to the absolute perfect coach, didn't have to play right away. And maybe there's some talent there in Bryce Young, but I don't know. It just it doesn't feel like it's ever gonna work out in Carolina. And then you wonder, like, when Canales took the job, did Canales even like him?
I know. Well, it felt like he was hired to fix Bryce Young,
right?
And I think that was sort of like the big picture look at it. But David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, has never been a super patient person.
Oh.
I think that's like the mark of his ownership of the team is like bold, rash decisions, bold, rash moves. Depending on the way you look at it, good, like that's good or bad. And so, I think after the way they started, they were basically DOA, and their offense has done absolutely nothing. It's been the worst offense by far. And I think he was essentially like, look, this is not working at all. Like, there's no difference. In fact, he looks worse than he did last year.
Yeah.
And I think he just pulled the plug on it. I think the other point I wanted to mention real quick with Caleb Williams is, like, we talked about this during the offseason. Like, he actually did land in what we thought was like a really good situation for a rookie quarterback, top pick, because he has like these talented receivers. He has, they did a lot over the last couple of years to like bolster their offense. But, the first 2 weeks of the season, Keenan Allen's hurt, Rome Odunze's hurt. Their offensive line is much, much worse, I think, than people were expecting. Much worse. He was pressured on like all but one of his dropbacks in that Monday night game. He's getting rid of the ball quickly too. It's not like he's holding on to the ball too long, or like Justin Fields. The thing with him was like he holds onto the ball and doesn't process. Like, Caleb Williams was getting rid of the ball. He just had absolutely no time to do anything.
He's got a good defense too. That was another thing. It was probably a check mark that why that maybe I think a lot of people thought they were going to have a good season.
Yeah, and the defense is really good. I think that the offense, if they can get healthy, if Keenan Allen can come back, if Rome Odunze can get a little bit more healthy, because you could tell he was hobbling around in that last game. So I still have hope for Caleb Williams, obviously, but I think the situation we thought he was coming into has like almost immediately disintegrated. So.
Will Russell Wilson ever start again?
That's a really good question. I think yes, but I think it's going to take Justin Fields either getting hurt or completely falling apart, which I don't think he will. He's looked pretty good, honestly. Like, this system I think Arthur Smith is running is like pretty good for him. It doesn't ask him to do too much. Gets him outside the pocket, running around, like make a couple of big throws make a couple big throws a game, and we'll have the defense take care of the rest. I don't think the Steelers are particularly good, but I think that they play that type of ball that we've seen from the Seahawks over the years, where they drag their opponents down into the mud and, limit the possessions and hope their defense can kind of just come out on top. And I think Justin Fields is much more dynamic than Russell Wilson would be able to be. So right now they're winning, and there's no reason for the Steelers to go back to him. If he falls apart and loses a couple games, then I think he will get back in there. Ultimately, I would guess Wilson starts a couple games this year, at least.
Belichick, do you think Belichick wants to coach the Eagles or the Cowboys next year? What do you think? Which job do you think he wants?
That's a great question. I don't think he would. I don't think he would want to work for Jerry Jones. Do you?
Well, no. I mean, he'd have to be like, you can't make you can't make personnel decisions.
I don't think Jerry Jones would hire Belichick, even though like it would be in his best interest.
Too much of a massive
too much ego. I think Jerry Jones wants his coach to be sort of like he wants to play puppet master to the coach. So I would say the Eagles probably.
But then I wonder, does Howie Roseman want that?
I know. That's a great question.
Because he's very good at what he does, and I don't think he wants somebody coming in there telling him, no, we need to do this, we need to do that.
This is exactly why Belichick doesn't have a job right now. It's like, there's egos involved. There are big picture personnel. Like, the team would have to give Belichick pretty much like carte blanche to do whatever he wants, I think, for him to take it. And so, even though he's the greatest coach of all time, I think pretty undisputed at that, teams are like afraid to like give him too much power at this point. It's a weird dynamic.
All right, quickly, some fantasy football questions from the YouTube chat room. Ricardo wants to know, what do you think about Atlanta's wide receivers? Thinking about picking up Mooney?
I mean, I would still be pretty concerned about the Atlanta offense in general. I think, they did look a little bit better this last week than they did the week before. But Kirk Cousins still not moving around all that much.
Yeah, he's held off Penix for at least one more week.
Yeah, I would say I probably would look elsewhere. I don't know. Mooney to me seems like he's going to be a highly volatile guy.
Okay.
He did have 16 points in this last game, but the week before that, 1 catch. I think it's going to be a lot of that because he's sort of like their deep threat guy. I think he probably could do better, but yeah.
Joel wants to know: do you stay away from Carolina's wide receivers now that the Red Rifle's in there, or do you jump on it since he is in there?
I tend to think this is a good buy low opportunity, especially for a guy like Deontay Johnson, who is now going to have a veteran quarterback who can feed him. And Deontay Johnson's always been kind of like that short and intermediate area, get open quickly, give his quarterback a guy who can get rid of the ball quickly and kind of just like move the chains. I think Deontay Johnson could be the type of guy who immediately benefits from this. Maybe people are kind of already on that train, but Deontay Johnson and the other old veteran guy whose name is escaping me, Adam Thielen. Think, those two guys could be definitely like buy low candidates right now.
Joel wants, or not Joel, but Dan wants to know if he's still around. I mean, I would assume he'd be picked up, but I don't know. Geno Smith. Yeah, I would say yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially if the Seahawks continue to sort of take the tack where if their run game's not working, they're going to pass the heck out of the ball, then yes, I think absolutely. Again, Geno Smith was like almost perfect in this last game. Really, if you go back to outside of that first throw he made in the season, he's been pretty dang good, like almost all good decisions. He's made some incredible throws. I think the touchdowns are going to continue. They're just going to continue to increase. And again, like I said, as long as Kenneth Walker is out, I think they're going to lean on Geno. So he's definitely good value.
The token Chiefs trying to snap it. They're 0-2, looking for their first victory of the season. So we need Dak Prescott to pick it up.
Yeah.
We need A-Chain to pick it up. Maybe a Devontae Smith, Garrett Wilson, the Gus bus to get going.
Honestly, the Gus bus thing probably not the best, but I like that squad. The rest of the squad's really good. Devontae Smith's gonna eat while AJ Brown's out.
Yeah, come
Devon
on.
Achane, I think he's like top 3 running back right now. Like he's really good.
Cowboys defense get a little bit more out of you. Cowboys defense.
Yeah, I don't know what that game with the Saints was. I don't know where that came from. Honestly, that was wild.
Unbelievable how bad that was. That was awful.
Yeah, I seriously didn't. I don't think anyone saw that one coming. That was like maybe the wildest, like in terms of the season so far, like the wildest story so far is what the Saints are doing on offense.
There it is. Again, you can we'll do this at the end of every show there with Danny. You can lob in a question there on the YouTube chat. Also, you can maybe email it at puck@pucksports.com. Puck2040 there on Twitter. I want to say X, but it just saying X sounds so dumb.
I'm not doing it.
Twitter. Follow Danny on Twitter at Danny B. Kelly as well. Danny Kelly joins us every single Wednesday, senior staff writer, Ringer Fantasy Football Show, the Ringer NFL Draft Show. It's all brought to you by Georgetown Brewery. Go visit georgetownbeer.com. Tap room is open right now from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Click on that little QR code when you're watching. It's going to take you right to the fabulous website. In case you missed it, this will be up on YouTube. You can also listen to it, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, and of course at pucksports.com.